This has nothing really to do with the points
You want to put the microphone in.
Well, it says it's not connected to what you were previously talking about, but this is as I've been trying to understand this point for some time. A while ago, I went to a home program, me and one of the devotees, and we went there, and it's a bunch of mentally handicapped. It's a mentally handicapped family, and they have such simple faith.
Okay.
And they can't understand deep philosophical terms.
Yeah.
Of course, they're mentally handicapped. But I was wondering, I was like, where does that simple faith come from? Because I look at myself and I realize it's almost like my pious credits are turning around and biting me in the behind. Because trying to understand all these deep philosophical points, it makes my faith very complex.
Yeah.
I require complex philosophy for my complex faith. So I was just wondering, what is simple faith and where does it come from? And
it's explained by the acharyas, everybody. The Prophet Muhammad, may his name be blessed, Jesus Christ. They all discuss this, and our philosophy is very nice because the Goswamis, everything else, they give very, very nice systematic explanation. Other things, you find the same things there. It doesn't matter whether it's Christian ice or Greek Orthodox ice or Jewish ice or Hare Krishna ice. If you apply heat, you're going to get water. So you find the same stages in spiritual development being described by different saints in different traditions. So this is one question. What is the relationship between analytical knowledge, right, mental speculation, and devotional service? Even in the Christian church, the Franciscan, St. Francis's side, they tend much towards intuitive thing and simple worship. St. Francis even forbid his priests to try and become, his brothers to try and become priests. Other side, the Dominican side, is very much aimed towards intellectual approach. But apparently, again, there was no real conflict between St. Dominic and St. Francis. Later, people didn't understand the whole thing. Rupa Goswami says, most basic definition, Anyabhilasita shunyam jnana karmati navritam. Pure devotional service is activity for Krishna, inspired by the parampara, which is favorable to Krishna, which is not, here's a go. It's very Anyabhilasita shunyam, which is not covered by any other motive for logical understanding or yogic powers or fruitive activities. Right? Yeah. The word is abhilas. Morae abhilas, vilas. Yeah. So he changes it to abhilasita, which changes it from desire to motive. Yeah, we shouldn't desire analytical knowledge of God. We shouldn't desire to get something from God. Right? Yeah. But at the same time too, we can desire analytical knowledge and all these things about God as long as that's not our motive. Our motive is to serve Him, right? But as long as the intellectual stuff helps us in that process, then it's just totally desirable. So that's the standard of how much your knowledge and stuff actually help you. In Bhagavad Gita 4:34, Tadvidi Pranipatena, Krishna probably talks about. Well, Krishna says, "I'll now tell you, how to understand all this kind of sacrifice I've been talking about. Understand it by approaching the spiritual master." Ask questions submissively, render service, and he'll enlighten you. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, both blind faith and absurd inquiry are condemned. Right? Yeah. So we're not in favor of blind faith. Krishna always gives you enough knowledge to act properly. Prahlad was there. Hiranyakasipu said, "Where's your God, Prahlad?" He is everywhere. Is he in this column? And then Prabhupada said, Prahlad was looking. He was a little boy, looking. He said, "Yeah, he's there," because Nrsimhadev was making his presence felt, and so he didn't require blind faith. No, he's there. He's reasonable. But then when we don't apply that, even though we know we should, that's when we're not being faithful. So blind faith is condemned, and they're faithful because they have some experience. Krishna gives them what they need to know. There's one guy, Bhakta John. He came to the temple, he moved in Berkeley, and he was a brahmachari there, big farm boy, maybe like about 22. He told us how he came to Krishna consciousness finally. He'd been out in Modesto, California, which is right in the center of California. Big farming, farming plots there, 200 acres, 500 acres, bigger, So his father and family had some pretty good-sized farmland. And he was there driving around one Christmas season, like maybe after Christmas, before Christmas, and checking on the pumps. It was cold and clear. And his friend was in the pickup truck too, and they stopped one place, kind of nice view, and his friend was inside with the heater going, listening to the radio. And he said he came outside, he was looking, and it was very nice. Then out of the sky came all these like people, celestial people. And one of them just said, "John, my name is Krishna, and you should find out more about me." And they kind of disappeared. And this guy was a really simple guy. He wasn't stupid, but he was very simple, straightforward. So he was kind of looking around like that, looked inside at his friend, and his friend listening to the radio, and okay. So next day he went to the Modesto Public Library. It's a real small farm town. One librarian, he said, "Do you have any books about Krishna?" So she looked at the thing. She pulled the Krishna book off this one. He said, "Yeah, that's the guy," So that's where his faith came from. It's very, very simple, just direct faith like that. Other side, absurd inquiry. No, it's knowing things that have no purpose. Practical purpose in devotional service. Radharani doesn't know that much. She knows what she needs to know. Which will enhance her service. Yeah. So same way for somebody, it's very useful. Some disciples, Prabhupada told them to stop their college work, get out of it, don't do it anymore. Other people, he wouldn't let them stop. Swarup Damodar Maharaj, I worked with him for a long time. He wanted to stop his PhD program in chemistry and join the temple, and Prabhupada just pushed him to finish it. Because he said it would be so useful, it's a fact. In that field, having a doctorate's almost essential for preaching in that atmosphere and stuff like that. But Giriraj Maharaj, he just told him, you got a bachelor's degree, that's enough. You don't need anything else. So it depends on what your service is, how much you need to know, and so on. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
This is a personal question. When we talk about the stages, Brahma and Rahasta, Vanaprastha, Sannyas, and I wondered about myself, and I'm told I'm in Vanaprastha.
Huh?
Vanaprastha.
Okay.
And which I understand from a very simplistic perspective, stage 1, 2, 3, 4. But I want to use, if it's meant that's there for a purpose. These different kind of denotations are there for a purpose. And what is the purpose in Vanaprastha?
No, boy. Okay, we're all born as, what's the word? Toothless suckers. And we all die as toothless suckers. I got one gone already, another one's probably going to go when I get back to Tennessee. It's okay. But it's a fact that we're always born with a lot of baggage. Every woman knows that the babies have a lot with them when they come. Some babies are terrified of everything. Some babies, there's a whole personality there. There's a whole history there we bring with us. And so many things about reincarnation now that it's really ridiculous not to have a lot of, investigative energy towards it. Okay. So the idea, though, is that pretty much the brahmachari life is education. If you take animals, they're in the stage of annamaya. Anna means food. So for an animal, basically, to live means to eat. They had the bears in the zoo, and the bears were getting bored. So they started a new program. They would just hide food in different places, or put it in different places that were difficult to get. And the bears would get out all day long. They would be pushing logs over and climbing up and getting this and that and looking under here and there, And that was okay. That was reasonable to them, spending all day looking for food. And once a year, a little romance, that was okay. It's a good life, satisfied. So that's annamaya, when you're satisfied just eating and that kind of stuff. And so a baby is usually very much like that. Then about 2 years old, the terrible twos, is pranamaya. At that point, you begin to identify with your life. Before you think you are the world. I am the world, And then after a while, at 2 years old, you begin to think, no, I am this body. So you're making progress. I am this body. And then like cutting the hair becomes a big giant, World War III. And the kids are watching their fecal matter go down the toilet, like that and stuff. Fighting over toys. It's a whole identification with boundaries and stuff. About 2 years old, passing water in your pants and stuff. It's a whole thing that happens. It happens with animals too. The next step is where pretty much it's where animal life gets distinguished from human life, and that's manomaya. And so, a little girl can do that, but not a little boy. We Americans do that, but not French people. So it's the whole thing. I'm French. I'm American. I'm a boy. I'm from this. I'm from that. I belong to this family. It's just manomaya, mental dharma. We were taking off from Peru and going to go next country, Chile. And on the way to the airport was this big, monument. And I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Oh, that's a monument to the brave soldiers of Peru who died fighting the evil soldiers of Chile." Okay. So I landed in Chile. And guess what we saw on the way to the temple? It's like, big monument. What's that? Well, it's a monument to the brave soldiers of Chile who died fighting the evil soldiers of Peru, And it was this monodharma, monodharma. Yeah, so on. So most people don't go beyond that, and they kind of identify with their culture and stuff like that. Part of our problem is we belong to a little bit more philosophical community. And in some ways, we don't realize how stupid people are. Like that. When you do book distribution in Sankirtan, in your life, you begin to contact people, go to work, and you realize a lot of people are just really, guys come to work, I got my kill this week, I shot 2 deer, and stuff like that. It's like, anybody want the hoofs? Like that. It's okay, Jack, I can keep the hoofs, But it's just they don't realize these are people, and having bullets go through the guy's shoulders, like they have no sympathy, So most people, they just like that. What are called? Right after World War I, there was the farmers were experiencing some animals stealing their corn and that stuff from the field. So finally they caught it. And I think it was about a 7-year-old boy, just wild, with his hair hanging down. And somehow or other he'd been raised by animals. These are called feral children. And they tried to civilize him, to teach him language, and it just was impossible. It was impossible. And finally he got pneumonia and died, so on. So at a certain point when you're developing anamaya, pranamaya, unless you have association with a human civilized life, you don't develop much more. You still find primitive people like in Philippines and South America, very primitive people, up in the mountains in India and Manipur. For example, in South America, it was maybe 5 years ago I heard this, maybe still, at the wedding, they have these big rituals. They get together, do things, exchange, women get married, do this and that, whatever, And so the ladies, when they get married, they put a wedding dress on. Then after that, every year on the anniversary, they add one dress, So after about 20 years, it's like this, and it start to rot, like that and stuff, Another one is when the fall comes and it's raining, they go barefoot. They let the mud pack up on their feet, and they don't break it off until springtime comes, right? So you got porcelain shoes for free, like that. So very, very primitive people. And the Bhagavatam calls them Naradama. They're almost like animals. And probably if they were raised amongst other kind of civilization, they would develop a different kind of character to a large degree. But because that's where they are, they develop this very simple, kind of view of reality. So manomaya is possible for human beings. Okay. Then above that is jnanamaya. This is where you get Socrates, Confucius, Lao Tzu, Solomon. People who talk about wisdom. We're talking about that before. Confucius says, when you go for revenge, maybe you should dig 2 graves first. You understand? Maybe better just to forgive is better than to, So this is all over the world. There's wisdom, and by which it allows us then to start to see other people, other things like that. In this war between, Peru and Chile, because they're neighbors, there was one General Grau, and the Chile guys were always whomping on the Peruvian guys, pretty much, So anyway, they had like four troop transports, and they're going to land their soldiers, 1890 or something, and conquer Chile, Peru or something. So then the Peruvians had some warships to try and like chase them away. And the first time they were successful, this Peruvian captain died. And then the Admiral Grau was able to collect some of his paraphernalia and send it to his wife with this very nice letter. You know, I'm very sorry that it came to me to actually have to be the person who was involved with this and kill your husband. But this is life and this and that, and he was a hero. And so even in Chile, they consider him, you know, to be a real gentleman like that and so on. You know, other things too. But this is where it starts to be somebody, you know, who's following a higher ideal, and he goes beyond the bodily concept and this kind of thing. You know, and finally, Anandamaya is where we actually realize happiness and serving God and so on like that. You know, so brahmachari life is for this kind of development. You know, development of character, development of, you know, of abilities to control yourself. And then, okay, if you can go directly to Vanaprastha, okay, you know, and some devotees do that. Or if you can go directly to sannyas, okay, you know. But most of us, if we didn't, how's it go? If we didn't have material desires, why do we have material bodies? Okay. So most of us have material desires. How many people here have material desires? Raise your hand. Okay. Yeah. And so the natural thing then is usually is to experience them. You know, try them out, but in a regulated fashion. Because if you don't do it in a regulated fashion, you won't be satisfied with the result, and you think, well, maybe if I did it that way, I would have enjoyed myself. So Devahuti and Kardamamuni, they enjoyed themselves like anything, you know, but they did it in a very regulated fashion. They followed the dharma of Grihastha ashram, and the end was that both he and she were convinced you're never going to be happy, you know, married in a material relationship like that, you know, that we belong to Krishna, right? Yeah. So then that's the Grihastha ashram. Grihastha ashram is a concession for this experiment. And most people have to go through it. That's the shortest way. I was married for a short period of time, and then at a very short. But I was really, I think, very sincere in trying to do it properly and trying to act properly. So I never was attracted again. I saw basically that this doesn't work. You know, here's the movie: me Tarzan, you Jane, him Cheetah. Okay, okay, let's try it again. You Tarzan, him Jane, me Cheetah. Yeah. And we try it again and again. After a while, we figure out we're all cheetah. We're all the monkey in the movie. Tarzan and Jane is already fixed. They're on the altar like that, changing into their pajamas. Yeah, so on. Yeah. So that's the purpose of Grihastha ashram, is to try this out in a very regulated fashion. If you do the work, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says Grihastha ashram is preparation for Vanaprastha ashram. And the Vanaprastha is basically detoxification. Because the connection in a Grihastha ashram is intense. You know, it goes deeper and deeper. I remember I've been separated from my family, the sannyas thing, before me directly. And I was having these dreams. You know, I saw how deep, you know, the connection is. It's actually most of our consciousness is subconscious. You know, Prabhupada totally accepted that word. You know, it's we have a tremendous amount of subconscious content to our subtle body, which is dictating why we do things and act upon certain reasons like that. You know, and so then Vanaprastha is to start getting free from the immediate connection slowly, until finally the wife returns to the family and very responsible, you know, for setting the example and guiding the family. And then the husband then goes in full renunciation in that sense, and then goes sannyas, and then this really comes to the point of different stages, right, of depending on Krishna and realizing he's really there and stuff, you know. So it's a big topic, you know. But basically, the Vanaprastha is a stage of transition stage, you know. And then the sannyas is the transition stage before dying. Yeah. Okay. So good luck. Yes. Me over here. Yes. No. Yeah. So one comment. Okay.
One comment on this Grihastha ashram, my realization or my thought process is that if somebody lives the Grihastha ashram very spiritually, the chances of elevation could be even higher than Brahma, sannyas or the other.
Yeah.
So
There's two dimensions. One is the The Varna ashram system is part of the external development,
Right.
and the Bhagavat Dharma is the internal thing.
Right.
So in any position, the Bhagavat Dharma can be high or low.
Because there is more sacrifice in Grihastha ashram than, I don't know.
You don't know. When a single stage is the same amount of sacrifice, but the idea is that I heard that Narottam Das Thakur said, if you chant Hare Krishna, it doesn't matter if you're a grihastha or a sannyasi. If you don't chant Krishna, it doesn't matter if you're a grihastha or a sannyasi. So the real thing is how we're developing Bhagavad Dharma at any level, like that and so on. Yeah. But in generally speaking, yeah, there's this general, Krishna sets up this external, arrangement, and it's useful, as you can see, like, yeah, it's useful. Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't take sannyas, but he was absorbed in the point where his daughter would bring him lunch, and he would kind of like look at her and try to figure, he was just absorbed in internal lila. So he didn't, that's rare, yeah. Yeah. And most of Mahajan are married, yeah. Prabhupada says there is no difference between the grihastha fully engaged in spiritual life and the man in the sannyas order. But because of formal austerities, the sannyasi is given more formal respect. Like when I'm in San Jose, Vaisheshika, our North American Santikran leader, he's younger than I am, but he took second initiation, the same letter I took first initiation, So whenever he comes in, I'm sitting like this in the Vyasasana, he comes in, and everything's nice, so on. So it's an external thing. Like Prabhupada is saying that this initiation ceremony, he says it's like the wedding ceremony. These are both formalities, but not without meaning. Yeah, like that. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to know, Maharaj, that for my own conviction, as well as to convince others, preaching, is it important to learn other scriptures also? It is related to education, because when I ask, that question comes to my mind, that if I tell something about our philosophy, then they might ask, and this question has come before me also previous times, that did you read our scriptures?
Yeah.
So they say the same thing, that this authority is God. So we also have the almost same philosophy, and or for that matter, even Indians can ask, like, did you read Shiva Puran? It says the same thing.
Yeah.
Lord Shiva is the supreme person.
Yeah.
So how far it is important for me to get myself convinced and to convince others to read other scriptures other than Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, or what have been recommended in ISKCON?
No, again, it's the same point as absurd inquiry. It depends on what your service is. These 4 kinds of people approach Krishna. Those who are in distress, okay. And people who are not in distress but need money, okay. And those who are curious. Now, they approach God because God is the most fun, the most interesting, and they read for that purpose, And finally, they approach Him because they have an understanding of who He is, and they try to serve Him properly. So it depends on our service. Like I was saying, Prabhupada forced, Bhakti Damana Maharaj to go ahead with his whole, career and stuff like that, And religion is a science. Science is a religion. Really it is. If you look at the exact definition of science, the way they try to use it. Albert Einstein was saying that we created science, all the people, Heisenberg, de Broglie, to understand a certain aspect of reality. We never intended it to answer all these big questions about what is life and all those kind of things. He said, that's not science, that's scientism. Yeah? And so when people try to understand different languages, different communities, different processes, you have to know their language, you have to know who are their respective personalities and that kind of thing. And so Bhakti Damana Maharaj, he wrote one essay called, what was it called? It was theobiology. Theobiology. And he was talking about God like the bound and unbound states of free radical oxygen or something. He was using their language, their metaphors, and you could see that a chemist then would go, now I see what you're saying, like that. So or when I go to South America, I have to learn Spanish. I can use a translator, but But then that process is even there. But I learned the language myself, and I could start to communicate faster. So you have to know enough about people's position to be able to communicate to them, right? Yeah, and that's it. It's a practical thing. Beyond that, no, we don't really need it. It's just our basically our again, it depends. Because it's not that everybody in this movement has to be a follower of Lord Chaitanya eternally. After you get out of this material world, maybe some people are going to go to Ayodhya and some people go different places like that. So on. And so, then you don't need to, maybe you do need to know something more about the Ramayana or something else. It's your inclination and so on. But if your position is all you're trying to do is to bring people to Lord Chaitanya and communicate his philosophy, then you have to know enough to be able to introduce them. And then they'll find their relationships and so on. But Lord Chaitanya loved Ram. He used to dress up like Hanuman. They would play Ram Leela, and stuff. So it's all a part of different cultures.
The reason I get confused is because I have not studied enough, right? Why I get confused is, it might be possible that Shiv might be saying that.
Yeah. No, because if you go on reading, Prabhupada gave us so many books. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati read all these things. Okay, he read all these things. And so therefore, he includes whatever we need to know in his books about them. And you look at Prabhupada's books; he'll talk about in the so and so Puranas and this and that, so on. Yeah. And so you'll find in Prabhupada's books there's is traveling in South India, and some Buddhists come and they want to argue with Lord Chaitanya, defeat his philosophy, and then in the purport, Prabhupada quotes Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives a description of Buddhism, the eight principles of what Buddhist philosophy include, and he discusses what the problem with each of those is like that. And so then, we know Buddhism, we know demigods, demigod worship, and stuff like that. But specifically, for example, where's Itasa? Gone here now. Anybody here speak Spanish? Habla español. Okay, I'll explain it to you then. There's a Sunday feast in Guayaquil. It's the capital of Ecuador, and one lady was coming, and she said, she had questions. She said, I like your philosophy so much. I came in contact with your books like about 2 months ago, and it's very nice, everything else. But I have one problem, and what's that, He said, well, in your books, it says that bread is meant for fulfilling illicit desires, right? And we're saying, it doesn't say in our books that bread is meant for illicit desires. And she said, I have a bakery. I said, oh my goodness, So we're looking at the thing, and in the extra instructions, she showed us. Prabhupada says that haritaki, pan, and these things are meant for fulfilling illicit desires. The word for bread in Spanish is pan, right? So everybody was like, no. So we had, you have to know the language to explain to her what's going on like that. And Prabhupada, probably wouldn't do it or something like that, So we have work to do. Prabhupada's an acharya. He's a sampradaya acharya. He makes the big picture, the big background like that. It doesn't mean we don't have work to do, And so the same way too, if you want to talk to children, you got to understand their mentality and stuff like that, and so on. So it's a practical thing, And if somebody, mentions this or that you don't know about, someone could talk to you about science or something, and okay, I don't know. I wouldn't. There's a lot of things we don't know. Prabhupada says that when we get in touch with the Paramatma, then we can explain the philosophy of Krishna consciousness in such a way that anybody can understand, right? The person's he's not gonna. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Have a seat. Yeah, he's gonna. A same person is not going to expect you to understand their particular thing. They're going to look for some common ground, and then they'll be able to understand. One more example. There was a big PhD scientist in Spain, and he was actually English speaking too. And the devotees didn't know what to do with him, so they had him washing pots and this kind of stuff. And he was okay. He was a sincere guy, but he was really feeling frustrated because he had many, many questions the devotees couldn't answer, And he thought somebody should be able to answer them. they said, yeah, we have scientists who know your culture, speak your language, and one of them is coming, Richard Thompson, Sariputta. So actually the person that told me was Bhakti Saranga Swami, he was there. And so they, then they did telling him, and finally Sariputta came to like Madrid, like at, 9:30 at night, and got to the temple by 10:30 and took rest. And the next, he'd already been told about the guy too. So Bhakti Saranga Swami said he was sitting there with Kesava Bharati, with a Spanish guy, scientist, and Sariputta walked in, and it was kind of like King Kong meets Godzilla. They both kind of like just, nobody introduced them anything else. It was just, they both like kind of looked at each other and they just, this is the guy, Then Sariputta kind of just made it to his chair and sat down. The guy asked a question, he gave him an answer. And Bhakti Saranga Swami said he had a tape recorder like about here. And he started to reach towards the tape recorder, and they both kind of like looked at him, and you see, he pulled it back like that, He said 3 times he tried to get it, and they both kind of turned there, It was like, 87 gigabaud information exchange, He could roughly understand what the questions were, but the answers and everything else was data, logic, went back and forth, and he said he'd never heard such an intense discussion. I had a discussion with Sariputta one time about trying to understand the position of sound in terms of this and that. We were talking on telephone, this and that. And so finally we met in San Diego. I was sitting there with him. He said, "Oh, that's what you want to understand." And he started explaining it. I said, "Can you slow down a little bit?" He did, and I could realize what he was saying. My friend Lokanath was a puppeteer. He said, even after he slowed down, I couldn't understand what he was saying. So everybody has a different ability, different mode, different perspective, like that. But that was it. He had faith, he trusted it, and the devotees put him in touch with a person who answered. And he was satisfied after that, totally satisfied. And somebody else will have some other intelligence, some other thing they have to be satisfied, like that. Okay? Yeah. So you develop your own Krishna consciousness, and then you can relate to other people. And in the end, it's a big elephant. 6 blind men went to see the elephant, right? One guy said, the elephant is a tree trunk. Other guy said, the elephant is, you heard the story? It's an Arab story. A wall. Oh, the elephant's a snake. Oh, the elephant's a big spear. Oh, the elephant's like a big leaf. Oh, the elephant's like a rope. Yeah, but if you just go on sincerely investigating your part of the elephant, then you'll see how everything else is also true. You see, we had a very nice discussion with these Islamic guys in South America, Sufi guys, and I was listening to everything he said. And he said it's like you start on different sides of a mountain. So on one side there may be a footpath all the way up, Other side there may be a road, but after that you come into some swamp or something, Yeah, so every single path has its advantages wherever you're at. But he said, but as you go higher, you expect the differences to get less. If you're not getting less, then there's something wrong, with your path like that, So every single thing he agreed with is so nice, The only thing I disagreed with is, was it basically for him, coffee is like Mahaprasadam. You can't understand God without sharing coffee with somebody else. It's okay. So Arabs, maybe in heaven there's a place for Arabs to have coffee or something with Krishna or something, But it was like that. We were all talking about the same thing, But it's just different traditions and stuff. And then the details, okay, work those out, if they're necessary. So, question, okay. Yeah. Watch.
This was a while ago. I was reading the Sri Chaitanya Shikshak. It's by Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. In the beginning, he was talking about it's the soul's natural tendency to praise God, or if conditioned, we praise people higher than us. It's our natural tendency to look up to people, to praise people. Like someone famous walks in the room, everyone wants to serve.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you can expand, because we're actually spirit souls, and all these symptoms of service and love leak out of us. I was wondering if you can expand on these symptoms of how we're actually spirit souls. You know what I'm saying?
Not exactly. Yeah.
I'm trying to put it into words.
Yeah.
These natural symptoms of the soul, they come out, and because we're conditioned, we can't see it. I'm just wondering if you can expand on what these symptoms are of what the spirit soul actually,
How do we love? and how our natural loving propensity is manifest in this world.
Yeah. And almost what the soul's natural tendency is,
To
and
love.
how it projects itself into this world.
Yeah.
You understand?
And that's what Rupa Goswami is talking about, And he's basically saying that our service attitude in the beginning is just appreciation. God is great. We just look, So this is Shanta Ras, like Krishna's flute, or Krishna's flower garland. They're just like Krishna's so great, like that. And you see different religions. They talk like this, and he was just absorbed in the ecstasy of the glory of God. But there's no service attitude, doing something, Okay, so another more intense stage is that we begin to start to want to do something for Krishna. Krishna has unlimited desires for Krishna's happiness. And Krishna is always coming up with new ideas how Krishna can have a good time. He's a very egoistic person, right? Yeah? Like Krishna wants a better temple. Krishna wants, more followers. I need more servants. I need at least 500 more servants this week. Go get them. I need more. Yeah. So he comes up with newer and newer desires. And so then the service attitude is to serve Krishna, to give Krishna what Krishna wants. Right? Unless Krishna wants something, the whole proposition has no particular value, But yeah, Krishna does want things. Really. Right? Krishna wants a red bicycle. Right? Krishna wants, he really wants stuff. There's so many things he's imagining and how he can do things. He wants things here in Chicago. He wants things in New York. He wants things, in Goloka. He wants things in Ayodhya. Right? He really does. He has his ideas. He's a supreme enjoyer. So then our service attitude is we want to serve him. We want to satisfy Krishna's desires. Right? Okay. Then a little bit more intense is where we become the point where we become friends with him, and even help him in his desiring, like that, and playing and that kind of stuff. Then more intense is where actually we take a dominant level of protecting him and telling him what he needs, right? And it becomes more intense with the gopis and stuff like that. We're telling him what he needs, like this and that, and so on, making arrangements, So those five mellows, friendship, servitorship, parental affection, and conjugal affection. So that's how the soul, loves God. And we see it manifested in this world and other relationships. So that's one. Is that your question? Maybe not. No, is that your question, or it may not be?
Put it into words.
Okay.
I'm just trying to understand how to understand that we are souls, by the symptoms, by the way we act, Because obviously, if we are spirit souls, talking devil's advocate here, then we have to express symptoms of being a spirit soul. And I was wondering, what are those symptoms that give you a clue that we're actually a spirit soul?
Well, because matter. The first one is that matter is not conscious, right? Are you conscious? Like that. Do you mind if I put the cartel on you? Well, it's kind of heavy. It's cold. Oh, it's cold. Yeah. You don't wonder about whether or not your washing machine actually has a good time washing the clothes. Did you wash the clothes? Wash the clothes. Yeah. So that's just matter is first place is not eternal, right? Yeah. So this is one quality. As we become purified, we begin to see that actually, we begin to realize that this body is changing, and I'm not changing. So you really get a sense of your immortality, and also you're inspired by immortal possibilities. Brother, you and I may die, but the revolution is eternal. Like that, okay. Things like that. What's his name? A big philosopher from Santana, phrase. He said, "There is no inevitability as long as there is a willingness to contemplate the present." It doesn't matter what kind of a pickle you get yourself into. If you're just willing to stop and contemplate what actually is going on and let it touch you, you can always find a way to go ahead. So that's immortality. Socrates, same thing. So this is Brasat. And you begin to actually realize, I'm not this body. So different processes are there by different people like that to begin to realize that. And also, I'm eternal, but I'm also conscious. I'm different from matter. The basic thing. And then finally, Ananda, and that's where then, you begin to realize these personal relationships, and that's the only stable platform for the soul, finally. And you see it again, you see it manifested in this world. You see reflections in this world of heroism, of parents, sacrificing for their children, children sacrificing for their parents, friends, friendship. Of course, our civilization is very materialistic, right? And so we don't see these things. I remember when I was a child, there were so many friendship songs, so many funny songs, but now so much of it is just trying like some kind of sexual gratification type thing like that. It's just becomes so stupid, Yeah. So then, you don't think of yourself as a spirit soul. One time there was an eagle, and her egg rolled out of the nest and rolled down the hill, passed this way, left, right, and finally ended up in the chicken yard. And the chickens all looked at it, and they had a conference, bluck, 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 bluck. They said, well, it's an egg, so they sat on it. Okay. And after some time it hatched, and a very ugly chicken came out, And he started looking around, doing what everybody else is doing, looking for cockroaches and this kind of stuff. But he got bigger than all the rest of the chickens. And sometimes when the eagles would pass over in the sky, he would move his wings and think, something's not right here, So that's why I say our current situation does not inspire anybody to think that they're the spirit soul. Our whole situation is everything's produced by matter, and we're going to demonstrate that in different ways, and we're going to get a pizza, drink this, drive this vehicle, Yeah? So, But here, singing and dancing for Krishna, it's a very simple way. I never cooked this way for myself or my family, but now I'm cooking for Krishna, and he'll know everything I do in terms of cleanliness, that kind of stuff. And then you feel reciprocation. Krishna goes, well, thank you. It's very nice. Okay? Yes, sir. Why do you cut your hair that way?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
My question is, why is it not necessary to take second initiation, and why is it necessary?
Okay. Now again, we mentioned this morning, it was a very nice conversation. Prabhupada was in England, and he was talking to maybe about 30-year-old, British professor. And the guy was kind of like Maitreya Muni, like a Jnana Mishra Bhakta, like that. And he was asking, nice person, but he was mostly intellectual type guy. The initiation, yes. Do you give it to the girls? Yes. And he said, but first we give a Harinam Diksha, which is more or less experimental. He said, and then when we see the students are serious or something, we actually initiate them, like that. And then he says, but Jiva Goswami says that in this age, a Harinam Diksha is sufficient, like that. Okay. So to give a practical example from my experience, I had the good fortune when I joined to be in San Francisco, and Jayananda was there, like that. And he was like, not an ordinary human being, this stuff. He was a kind of big guy. And he was always the most humble, I'll take care of it, Prabhu, I'll do this and that and stuff, And I remember one time I tried to be more humble than Jayananda. It was like, I had Mahaprasad passed out. And so himself or myself, some of the sweet rice fell on the floor. And we both were going to wipe it down, and in the good old days when somebody would knock a cup of sweet rice over at the Sunday feast, everybody would look it up, That was like to the great astonishment of the first time guests, Prasadam, Prabhu, So anyway, we're going to wipe it up or something. It wasn't that much. And so we both started going for it. And it happened very quickly, it was my intelligence could see my mind working, and it wasn't me, it was my mind. It happens fast like that, you can see it. And so I was thinking, oh yeah, okay, Jayananda is always the first person to get up from more humble than Jayananda first, And so in the pressure of going there, so it was a very intense moment, I was becoming angry. Why are you forced to become humble? I could see that he meant it by person. And when it happened, I had this experience like this kind of like square opening up in the floor with no bottom. It was like, like that, Because, his humility was, a lot more real, humility and stuff like that, So the Rath Yatra, sometimes it wasn't going to happen. The publicity wasn't together. So I think one year he went 3 days and 3 without sleeping or eating. Just continuously working with devotees, like 72 hours. The whole thing happened. Afterwards, he got everything put away, gave prasadam to all the people that had helped. And had maybe like 4 days worth of rounds to chant. He sat down and chanted them all without stopping, just in front of the deities. He sat down and chanted. It was like 65 rounds straight, never getting up. Sometimes just, to take second initiation. He was a Shudra. He was a mechanical engineer. His Brahman sweat was black from automobile grease. He used to finish the mantras off quickly. He said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Chant your Gayatri so quick." He said, "Yeah, I can't remember half the mantras." Like that. Yeah. So he's a lot more, than a Shudra. I will reveal my suspicions right here. He left his body the day before Nrsingadev's appearance day. That's when it's celebrated. Haridas Thakur didn't want to hang around for Lord Chaitanya's disappearance, right? And so Jayananda didn't hang around for Prabhupada. There was an incarnation of Prahlad Maharaj, disappearance day before Lord Nrsingadev. I will say no more, Maharaj. What Prabhupada said and stuff like that. At least it puts that in perspective. Okay, what does he need the second initiation for? And it's actually not practical. Second initiation means you're supposed to set an example that when people walk through the door, they'll see, oh, this is how, these people, it's a formality, for comportment between men and women, how you're eating, how your cleanliness. Jayananda wouldn't be there in Mangalarti sometimes. Oh, lazy guy. No, because he left before Mangalarti. He could always take a couple people with him. He'd go to the produce market that time and come back with all this free produce and everything else like that, so on, Then I noticed he grabbed me in my treasury room and said, "Let's have a reading, Hanuman." And I noticed that he put everything together. He always had a complete morning program. He had, reading a little bit, chanting, everything else like that, and so on. But he knew how to do it, spontaneously, right? So that's not good for an acharya, for neophyte people. If you have a small, soft heart, you can't be an acharya for ordinary people. If you have a large, hard heart, you can be an acharya for ordinary people. Some devotees have hearts like diamonds. Some devotees have hearts like butter. Right? A little bit of Krishna Katha, their hearts melt and they have external symptoms. Others have beautiful diamond-like hearts. Others have very big hearts. If I tell you to hide an elephant in the building, it might be a hard job to do. If I tell you to hide an elephant in Chicago, it's no problem. So what kind of heart did Prabhupada have? Sometimes he couldn't control himself. The symptoms would come out. He would try, so on. But he was trying to be an acharya for common people, right? Other people like Raghunath Das Goswami and me wasn't. They weren't trying to be acharyas for common people. So these symptoms. I mentioned this morning, the Encyclopedia Britannica, it says that Lord Chaitanya was a religious epileptic, right? They can't understand, Yeah. So, and Lord Chaitanya didn't try to be an acharya for common people so much, He left that work to other people like Advaita, Nityananda, others, so on. But the confidential stuff, he, in those positions, he was manifesting these things. So therefore, second initiation is useful if you're going to be a high-class Vaishya, a Brahmana, or a Kshatriya. You should take it, like that. And this movement's very Brahminical in the beginning, so it's common, But other than that, no, it's not necessary. It may even be an impediment, for you. Okay? Final questions or comments here. Pan. You hear my story about Pan? This lady, she said, Guayaquil, she said, "Oh, I like your movement, but I have a bakery. And your books say that, bread is for fulfilling illicit desires." And so we're all freaking out. We didn't say that. She showed us in Upadeshamrita, says, haritaki, cocaine, pan. We told him that's Indian pan, which is toxic. Yeah. Some jokes aren't funny in English. ¿Cuántas estrellas en el cielo? So, 50. How many stars are there in the sky? 50. 50 is 50. 50 is without count. Yeah, okay, so it's funny in Spanish, Yeah. This is why it's so difficult to translate the more advanced works like Lalita Madhava and Vidagdha Madhava. Because he's using all these subtle things in the language to create all this funny things or these different things like that. So translating Vidagdha Madhava, Lalita Madhava is like, you know, it takes somebody who can do it in English, who can understand it. Yeah, basically you have to rewrite it, so on. So, any final questions, comments, or complaints? No. Everybody's happy? Everybody's convinced? What are you convinced about? I'm not convinced. Yeah. At a certain point, we realize we're convinced about the philosophy and everything else. Everything becomes very clear, and so on. And you realize, we have doubts. There's no problem with having doubts. We have questions. Arjuna had, after the Bhagavad Gita, he surrendered. He had no doubts that Krishna could remove his doubts. That's what first initiation, whatever means. You have no doubts, or you have no doubts, so the person can remove your doubts. That's Madhyamadhikari. It doesn't mean you don't have doubts and questions, but you haven't got artificial questions, right? You're not artificially doubting things, right? Yeah. So we have unlimited questions. It goes on and on forever. Krishna has questions. Krishna expands his glories and his beauty, and so he can't even understand how great he is himself. Then his potency then expands to understand it. So there's always this competition between his glories and his knowledge potency, like that, and so on. Krishna can't figure out what the gopis are going to do. They can't figure out half the time what they're going to do. So it's full of what's the word? Fun, creativity. We're like that. We don't know. Every single spirit soul is designed differently. Krishna winds us up and starts it up. Okay, I wonder what this one's going to do, Radharani. I don't know. Let's watch. Yeah, she's in Maya. Let's see how she's going to get out of it. Okay, let's watch. So every single one of us has unique abilities, and they're unlimitedly expanding. And as we investigate them more and more, then we can do more and more in the spiritual world. How many people know who Konstantin Stanislavski is? You're living right next to Evanston, you should know. He's one of the biggest people in the history of drama and theater. Almost all the modern schools of theater are based on his works. He said, in the drama, there are no small parts. Oh, I got a small part in this drama. So there are no small parts in the drama, just small actors. Yeah. He had like one scene. There's a king sitting there, and all these guys have to do is stand there with spears, while this dialogue goes on. That's their whole part. I got a small part. He had each of these spear guys write a 5-page biography of their character, like that. 5-page biography. Maybe okay. There was 2 days before. Even there's guarding the king for 5 years, 6 years. Okay, nothing happens. 2 days before, some people came, and all of a sudden they pulled some swords out and tried to attack the king. And you saved the king's life by that much, and you got a cut on your hand as a part of it. Okay, so now when you're standing there watching people. Yeah, you see the difference? the whole subtext, the attitude and stuff like that. So there's no limit. Radharani's position is not a position. We can compete to be better servants of Krishna than Radharani. Okay. It's every living entity has a right to opportunity to try and serve Krishna the very best, right? And by doing that, we get stimulated. And in the end, everybody has a unique way that nobody else can do. And as long as we're in Maya, Krishna is not going to get that unique service. So, you better get out of Maya. Okay? Okay. Thank you very much. Sapapar ki jai. Krishna Mantra ki jai.